In the last episode here on Plant One on Me, we visited the Tropical Alpine Orchid exhibit at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, and we're carrying on with that tour with Becky Brinkman through the rest of the orchid exhibit. This episode is brought to you by my new podcast, Bad Seeds. The phrase black market evokes sinister images. Stacks of AK-47s, crates of cocaine. But potted succulents on a windowsill? No one is calling Crime Stoppers for that. But maybe you should, because the biggest black market you've never heard of might be blooming right under your nose.
This plant could sell for between $10,000 and $15,000 on the open market.
And where there's big money, there are bigger risks.
We were just tied up with what looked like garden string behind our backs, these big M16s stuck to our heads.
I'm Summer Rayne Oakes. I'm a plant expert and author. On the Bad Seeds podcast, we plunge straight into the underworld of plant crime. From Mexican drug cartels to corrupt elected officials, we explore how the black market for plants has repercussions for you, me, and the fate of the planet. Listen to Bad Seeds on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so this is completely different.
Yes, different environment altogether. This is the orchid display house where we have orchids on display that grow in the lowland tropics. Mm-hmm. And you can see we're in the middle of a display switch out here, some empty beds here.
Right.
But this cedar pergola that we're looking at is where we have some of our permanent collection.
And so you have quite a lot of display here. Do you want to take us through? Because a lot of things are in bloom now, but it seems like do you transition things that are in and out of bloom so that most of the things here are in bloom at the moment?
Exactly. About twice a week we go through and do a switch out.
Okay.
And what's in this corner right here are some of my favorite orchids, the euglossine bee-pollinated orchids.
And you specialize in, is this something that you guys specialize in?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about that.
This is one of our specialties. Okay, so euglossine bees are large iridescent bumblebee relatives that live in the tropics. And the male bees collect fragrance, not as food, but to attract female bees.
Yes, as cologne.
And euglossine bee orchids produce really powerful fragrances just to attract male euglossine bees. And each species of euglossine bee orchid produces a distinctive fragrance to attract just one or maybe two bees.
I mean, watch out, CK1, you know? Mm-hmm. This is like the perfumery right here.
The perfumery.
Yeah.
The fragrance, wintergreen, vanilla, eucalyptus. Some people swear one of the fragrances reminds them of chocolate.
And then basically the bee goes to lots of these and mixes it up and tries to get the best fragrance that will make all the ladies go crazy.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
It's
And that one you just looked at
wonderful.
is one of the most bizarre. That's one of our bucket orchids.
Mm-hmm. Look
see
at
how
it.
strange that is?
Yeah, and then look at the little sugars. Is that what they are? These little sugars, dew droplets right there?
Those are two glands that produce sugary liquid that fill up the bucket below. The bucket is actually part of the lip, the lowermost petal of that flower. And the way this works is the bee comes along and lands on the lip and scratches to obtain the fragrance, which is a volatile. And so he scratches with his front legs and then transfers it to his hind legs, and in doing so loses his grip on that slippery surface and falls into that liquid-filled bucket. Right? And at that point, his wings are wet and he can't fly out. So the only way out is through this little aperture in the back.
Mm-hmm. It's like a car wash. It's like a bee car wash.
It's a bee car wash. And it's a super tight fit. You have to squeeze through, and in doing so, the pollinia are smacked onto his
back.
His body, yeah.
Which is basically how he then pollinates maybe another plant, that little pollinia, it's pollen sacs.
Exactly.
Okay.
So once he's picked up the pollinia here, he goes off in search of another coryanthes that's producing that same fragrance and goes through the whole thing again, gets dunked again.
You think you'd learn.
You'd think. You'd think it would be traumatic, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to do it again.
Yeah.
But such is the lure of that fragrance.
And then this says the Gongora species?
That's a Gongora.
I love the color. It's like a dusty rose.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
That's Gongora unicolor. Sort of a slightly different pollination mechanism there. The bee lands on the lip, which is this, and while transferring fragrance, loses his grip and falls down what's a chute or a slide right there and picks up the pollinia, which are at the very end of the column.
And are these specific to the Euglossian bee? Is there anything else that actually would pollinate these plants in the wild?
No.
So it's species specific. Like if you removed this plant, the Euglossian bee would no longer have that plant to pollinate. Are there specific, I guess, are there Euglossian bees that are specific species that are specific to one type of orchid?
Yes, that's definitely something that happens, yeah. There are also orchid species that attract a couple of pollinators, different pollinators, but they have to fit the configuration of that flower. They have to fit inside that shoot.
Because if they're too big, they wouldn't be able to get out.
Yeah.
And then this one, it's much more like waxy, almost like candle-like.
That's a lycomormium.
That one was just hiding right under there.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
That red color is so striking and unusual in orchids. That's Huntley Willisii.
Why would it be so unusual?
That's a good question. I don't know why red isn't better represented in the orchid family.
Sometimes when I think of like a red like that, again, it reminds me of a carrion kind of plant. You know what I mean? Like maybe something that a beetle would kind of deal with, but you don't know. But oftentimes when you see white, it could be something that's maybe even at night, like if something is of night blooming and it's easier to see.
Well, while we're on the topic of fragrance, I want to show you another orchid.
Look at this one, first of all.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a fishing pole, this kind of like,
isn't that wonderful?
Over, yeah.
Yeah, it comes from that orchid right there. That's a myrmecophila, and that has a symbiotic relationship with ants. Those pseudobulbs, right, which look like horns, are hollow inside, and ants take up residence in there, and
which is probably how it got its name, right? Myrma.
Okay, so at the other end of the fragrance spectrum, we have this Bulbophyllum phalaenopsis.
Okay.
Yeah. So if the Stanhopeias smell like vanilla icing and a confectionery.
My guess is that these smell a little more putrid. Oh, yeah. That's not nice. No, that smells like death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rotting body.
Yeah, you want to give it a scent? Smell?
And you see the hairs?
Yeah.
Most of Bulbophyllums have hairs that wave in the wind to attract a fly pollinator. And some of them have warts or like little protuberances that look like maggots.
Yeah.
Yeah, really charming.
This one's a gorgeous color.
Isn't that nice?
It's almost see-through, the way that the petals are.
That's Dendrobium primulinum. And you notice it doesn't have any leaves yet. It's deciduous in the wintertime. It needs a cool, dry rest. One of the things I've noticed is that this greenhouse, since it opens entirely to the sky, we've been visited by the native bees who have totally figured out how to pollinate tropical cattleyas.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, cattleyas are one of those ones that also have really beautiful scents. I feel like they're the corsages of the orchid world. And so, what's spectacular about the cattleya pollination that they needed to figure out?
I think they must just fit exactly inside the flower. There must be something visual that attracts them, or a scent. They see a different part of the electromagnetic spectrum than we do, and so yeah, it's reminding them of something in their native environment. And so they're coming in pollinating these, which is fun, but then we have to destroy the capsules.
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's open pollinated.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we don't know who the male parent is.
Right.
So when we want to get seed off of an orchid, yeah, we don't use bees, right? We use pencils actually to pollinate
That's why you
orchids.
have the pencil
That's
right
why I'm
there.
carrying the pencil, yeah. And we do a controlled cross, so we know who both parents are, and we can keep track of the data.
And then do you put it like on a tag like this, or how do you
Yes.
work it? Okay.
Yeah. So are you game for pollinating an orchid?
I would love to.
So these are some of our vandas, some of the largest flowers out here at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, orchids from Southeast Asia. This is a good place to start with pollination. Okay.
Do you have to clean your pencil afterwards?
I do. That's why I use a
Yeah.
mechanical pencil so I can break the end off. So one of the things you'll notice about an orchid flower, is that if you look at it in profile, you'll see projecting forward is a structure that looks almost like a nose, the way a nose projects forward from a face. And that's the column, and that's the fusion of male and female parts. And at the very end of the column is a cap, a removable cap. Normally the bee removes that cap. And that can just be removed with the tip of a pencil.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah. And it comes away just like that. There's a little sticky disc at the end that's attaching it to the pencil. Yeah. And do you see the two pollen masses inside?
I do, yeah. They look like almost like little bug eyes.
So most orchids don't produce pollen grains. They produce their pollen in waxy masses like this.
Wow.
And so the bee would take off with this entire structure, sticky disc and all. Yeah.
And so when you pollinate, do you pollinate like another of the same flower? Do you like self it, or?
Normally we try not to self because it creates inbreeding depression after a while.
Right.
So we try to outcross when we can, but sometimes we don't have a choice.
Okay.
And we end up selfing. Yeah. So once you've got the pollinarium, which is the word for the pollen masses in the sticky disc, on the end of your pencil, then you're ready to pollinate the orchid, right? You look on the underside of the column. You'll see there's a sticky, depressed area. It's kind of sticky and shiny. That's where the pollen goes.
Right, so just in that little receptacle.
Sometimes that sticky disc is so sticky.
Yeah, it's just like stuck to the pencil.
It won't go in there.
There you go, okay.
That's it.
And that's all.
Yeah. So now I'm going to break the end of the pencil off.
Okay.
So there's a clean piece.
Look at you. All these little techniques. Okay, so with this one, I could take this off from here. Stop me if I'm doing something wrong.
Slowly.
Oh, I got that. Okay. Looks like a little cobra head. And then
So now you want to take the cap off the end of the pollen masses. Yeah.
wait, this. So.
Yeah. Just take that little.
Oh, okay. I
bit off.
see. Okay. Oh, it looks like two little egg yolks or whatever. And so then I go under here. I'm holding the lip away. Right here. Oops, I just broke the lip a little bit. Okay. Oh, that went in really easily. Oh, look at that.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's it.
Congratulations.
I know, look at that. I feel so dirty now. Here you go. And this is what happens.
Yeah, that's what an orchid capsule looks like.
Wow, this is robust.
Yeah, that's actually a cattleya capsule.
Okay.
And that's what a ripe one looks like.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
And there are hundreds of thousands of seeds in there that are tiny and dust-like. Right? They're dust-like. They don't have any storage carbohydrates, no nutrition inside the seed. Yeah. And so in order to germinate an orchid seed, you have to germinate them in the lab, right? In nature, they would form a symbiotic relationship with a fungus that would provide nutrition.
I see. Okay, so are you doing it like on a nutritious auger style thing? Okay.
Yeah.
It's fascinating that we have to like compensate that much and to kind of figure out like how to actually resolve the situation for what nature is doing naturally, you know, in its own environment.
Sure.
So
Sure.
when does this break open? Do you have to break this open, or it just gets to the point where it gets dried and then like kind of the dust-like capsules are all over the place?
It splits on its own.
Yeah.
And you can see right down the seam
Yeah.
in between. Yeah. And in nature, we just scatter the seeds through the wind.
So do you, so this doesn't like scatter in the middle of the evening. Are you putting it in like a kind of a plastic bag and then collecting the seeds afterwards, or?
Sure. We put pink flagging tape on it so we don't lose track of the capsule, right?
Okay.
And we keep an eye on it. And once the capsule starts to split, we harvest the capsule and then send it to the lab.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much for letting me experience that. It's kind of cool.
That was fun.
Yeah. I mean, and how often are you doing that? Are you saying like I need more of this kind, or?
So we have marked our high priority orchids. We have decided which of the orchids in our collection are the most valuable, and those are the ones that we're prioritizing the propagation of. And so we've marked those, the plants themselves, and in the database. And so we're in here at least a couple of times a week just looking for those plants, and pollinating them.
Well, look at this one. This is kind of funky, right?
Isn't that great?
It looks like a rain chain.
That's another Silogeny from Southeast Asia. And even the inflorescence, it's even cool when it doesn't have buds.
Yeah.
This is a rare species that's endemic to Madagascar, Gramangus elysii.
This one's funky too. It looks like a little like whorled skirt.
That's a Ceropelum. It's actually related to that awful smelling
one
up front. Back here is where we come out from under the cedar pergola, and we come into an area with a more naturalistic design, where you see orchids growing on trees and on rocks. This is a brand new epiphyte tree that we just put in. This is what it looks like before it's planted. This
Completely
is
bare.
before, yeah. When we were thinking about building the Orchid Center, we went around the country and looked at how other people were growing orchids in their display spaces, and we became convinced that we wanted to make sure that the epiphytic orchids, that we got them up off the ground and onto some sort of substrate or some sort of attachment that would be suitable for them. We didn't want to just bury them in the ground, as we saw over and over again. As you look around here, you can see different types of epiphytic surfaces. This is Juniperus virginiana, which is our favorite type of epiphyte tree.
And why is that? Just because it has like craggy little bark, or what?
Orchids are really fussy about what sort of substrate they'll grow in. I'm referring to substrate as sort of in a broad sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm like, this is more of like a native species up towards where we are in New York. Yeah,
it is. But orchids are super fussy about what they'll put their roots on. They want a surface that's kind of rough and a little bit spongy and water retentive. They won't grow on a smooth, hard surface.
Yeah, so it just seems that the Juniperus tends to work for it.
They love that. Plus, they last a long time. We're just getting around to replacing the ones that we put in 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But we use other things as well. These are some pieces of tubular cork that we'll be putting epiphytic orchids on.
Which I think is common. I see that a lot.
I think I prefer the junipers because they look a little more naturalistic.
Right.
Yeah. We also wanted to show people how lithophytic orchids grow on rocks. And so here you can see some orchids of Mexico growing as you would see right in the crevices of rocks.
And are they picky about the kind of substrate of rock, or do they want something like a craggy rock, or are they seem to be just, non-specific?
Well, that's an interesting question. We have different types of lava rock in here. There's the soft, porous lava rock that comes from out west that you're probably familiar with. It holds a lot of moisture. This is Mexican pot rock. It's super dense, super hard.
Is it heavy?
It's extremely heavy, unlike the other stuff. And at first, it seemed like the orchids didn't want to put their roots on it. I thought, oh no. But then they did, and now they love it. So it just took a while.
You'd bring all those heavy stuff.
I know, exactly. And you're like, no.
Say it inside. And these are some of our older epiphyte trees. We're going to actually be replacing a bunch of these this year.
And is it just because they got too big for their britches, or they're like past their prime, or?
They're past their prime. Everything ends. And so we've replaced all of the tubular cork in here within the last couple of years.
It's so funny. It's like it looks like you corked a post or something.
Well, we did.
You did, okay.
That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
You can see the vertical.
Oh, yes, the little vertical, yeah.
Yeah. Thought we'd make use of another vertical surface in here.
What's this one here? This one also looks like kind of a lady slipper, but is really robust.
It is. This is one of the New World slipper orchids.
Okay.
Yeah, Phragmopedium, like the one we saw in the high elevation house.
It's tall though, boy.
Yeah.
Well, really wonderful collection of orchids. I thank you so much for taking us through this. I mean, I think we're going to spend a little bit more time in the house to take a closer look at them, because they are a flower or an inflorescence that really deserves a closer look as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. It was great to have you.
We'll be continuing on with more tours here on Plant One On Me. So if you'd like to support the channel, simply like, subscribe, and hit the notifications button. You can also consider taking our online houseplant courses at homesteadbrooklyn.com. It means a lot to us here, and we'll see you in the next video.